I'm lazy to check on that.
Wait a minute, let's see.
Folks, here is David, who
Hi,
is,
my name's David, one of the reference librarians here. I just wanted to go over a few things. Welcome to Reston Library, Reston Regional Library. Thank you for coming to the Mountain Stories and Songs with the Dulcimer. We appreciate you coming out today. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. Please turn your cell phone off or set to vibrate. Emergency exits are throughout the building, including one right off to the left there. The restrooms are down the hall on the right, so if you need the restrooms. I hope you are as excited as I am for today's event. A couple of guidelines we would ask that you please ask you to respect both the facilitators and other customers. So without further ado, please welcome Ms. Maddie MacNeil and Mr. Ralph Smith.
hi, folks. Well, folks, we want this afternoon to spend, I should say, all the time on the old mountain frontier. We say that every song you hear this afternoon is at least 100 years old or your money back. Okay. And our general plan is as follows. We'll just sing a song. Obviously, you can already tell from the handouts that you got yourself stuck. You expect you to sing. Not that you know how to sing. That's not the point at all with folk music. Just enjoy yourself. Secondly, we are going to give you some old songs. And the songs are, you might say, BBG, before bluegrass. This is Old Frontier Appalachia. And the instrument is Old Frontier Appalachia. It comes to us out of the midst of the mountains with practically no written record. And I've spent some time trying to find out as much as I could in the mountains from old folks and from looking at old instruments. I will pass on to you some of that today. So it's old songs and some old information about an old instrument of the mountain frontier. That's what we'll do. Now, this kind of thing never works according to plan. About 2 nights ago or something like that, Madeline called me and said, you know, I found a very interesting book. And it was published in 1918, 100 years, didn't I tell you? I said, well, look, why don't you just show this to the people and sing a song out of it? So that is not on the list here, on our playlist or anything like that. That's what's going to happen. That's how we'll start. All right? Maddie, go ahead.
All right. Well, now this book, I pass it along so you can see it carefully. Look at it.
Don't sneeze or
no,
away.
No. And because Singer's Glen, and this was quite a place for the Sacred Heart music and all kinds of music. There, that's south of Harrisonburg, along in the Route 11. Not 81. It didn't exist then. But anyhow, I was in this shop and just looked at this book, and I'll pass it around so you can see it. It says, "Don't steal this book, my honest friend, for electric chair will be your end. And when you die, the Lord will say, where is the book you took away from the UB, the United Brethren Church at Singer's Glen, Virginia?" And it says, "If my name you wish to see, look on page 93. Well, when you start going through, it keeps sending you to a different page, and then it stops. And so I think that's probably when Mother or Dad said that. But this shape note edition, so we can start this.
And do you need it to sing? Maddie can sight read and sing.
Well, no, but
I cannot do it.
When I bought that book, truly it cost about $1 or $2 or something like that, and I just loved the writing in there. But anyhow, this was from another one of those old hymn books, and I'll just tell you about this and pass it along and just sing a verse from it, because this was written in 1918. And by Charles Gabriel, who had more than one name, because writing things and so forth. And he did shape note things, music there, and he wrote something like about 5,000 hymns. But anyhow, I love hymn books and old hymn books, and this is one I had, and I found one, and it says, and the title of it is "Make Somebody Happy Today." I thought, well, that's nice, and so I wrote it out, and we'll pass it along, and here's the first verse. I'll just let's see. Well, I'll just pick another. If your own sorrows you want to forget, make somebody happy today. If in your heart you would know no regret, make somebody happy today. Others nearby you may be in despair, struggling 'neath crosses so heavy to bear. They may take heart if you show that you care. Make somebody happy today. Make somebody happy today. Oh, sing a glad song on your way. The good that you do brings blessings to you. Make somebody happy today. Isn't that cool? And if Susan passes around and look at the other version is saying basically the same thing in other ways.
If you
just
want
be
it, maybe
nice.
up at the front desk, they might copy it for you.
Oh yeah, sure. Oh yes.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, okay, folks, now we, who knows where it will end, but at least we'll start with our little list here. And we want to sing Waterbound for you. Waterbound is one of those very simple tunes that's floated around the mountains for gosh only knows how long. You've got the words there, and what we will do is sing it. Now, it will not try you very hard. You know something, everybody's got a copy except me. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you know it? Just a minute, let me get one over there.
Oh, I've got.
That's all right, Maddie.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
It's on the back of one of them. Is that Waterbound? Okay, thank you. Okay. When I was a boy, I played the harmonica. How about you guys? Did you play the harmonica when you were a boy?
Not well.
Well, I didn't ask that. I think a lot of boys played the harmonica when they were, let's be careful here, you were my age. Not so much today. Anyway, I still play it. I'm going to play Waterbound on the harmonica. All right, so let me just find out where I am. Okay, I'm waterbound and I can't go home. Waterbound and I can't go home. Waterbound and I can't go home. I gotta leave the home. All right, now here we all get hold it. Here. Okay, so that's how it goes. You got it? I mean, this will not kill you. This will not do it. Okay, here we go. I'm waterbound and I can't go home. Waterbound and I can't go home. are, guys. Right out of the old frontier, a very simple song, and lots of fun. Okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the mystery of the Dulcimer. And begin with, I wish this lady were here. I'm going to begin with the old Dulcimer that I bought from a lady living here in Reston. I only wish she were here. I was just hoping, I'd forgotten her name. It was about 7 or 8 years ago. But here is the tale. I was playing Dulcimer over at the Lake Ann Coffee House 7 or 8 years ago. And here was a nice lady, I would guess, since I'm older than she is no matter what, I was guessing her 70s. She watched and she smiled and all that. And she came 2 or 3 times. And finally she said, "Mr. Smith," she said, "I got something like that under my bed at home." And I said, "Well, could you bring it in?" She said, "Sure, I would." So she brought it in, and since you're up there, since you're there, that's very convenient. Would you give me the one on the, let's see, the one on the left?
This one?
No, screw it, in the middle. Sorry. Middle, no. Don't you know that? Thank you. All right. She brought it in, and this is what she brought in. I knew what it was. I've been researching, and I knew what it was. I said, "Where did you get this?" And she said, "Well," she said, "when I was a teenager, I was a hippie." She said. And she said, "When you was a hippie," she said, "the thing you had to do was 2 things. You had to have a candle, and you had to have a Dulcimer." And she said, "The candle was easy, but where was I supposed to get a Dulcimer?" And she said, "Somebody told me that there was a man down in Kentucky who made them for you and would sell them to you, send them to you by mail, and would only cost you $30. And so I did it," she said. And the Dulcimer arrived, and his name, she said, was Jethro Ambergy of Hyman, Kentucky. And Jethro Ambergy sent it to her in a handmade wooden box and said, "If you don't like it, send it back, and it's $30. So it was very clear to me that the good lady wanted to sell it. So I said to her, "By any chance, would you like to sell that?" And I said yes. She said yes. And I gave her the going price. We share everything here. The going price 7 or 8 years ago was $375, not $30. And I gave it to her unhesitatingly. Now, folks, I want you to look at this carefully. And I want Maddie to hold up and show her that this is a modern Dulcimer. And hello, sir. How are you? Come on up and get the handouts. You'll not be disturbing us. Just go right ahead. All right, guys. Now I want you to look carefully, and I want you to see a couple of things. The first, of course, is wooden pegs. Making wooden pegs by hand is no small trick. It's got to hold, and it's got to be just right in the hole. These are Maddie's is not wooden pegs, obviously. No modern performer is likely to have wooden pegs in concert. But there's something else I want you to look at this. I want you to look at this very carefully. See if anybody spots it. Here, you want to see it?
There's no fret on that.
Now, what do you want? These camera people. All right, what do you want?
There's no fret on the bottom string.
Yeah, we have friends.
He's got it. The bottom string has no fret under it, right? And in fact, the middle string is hardly under the fret. The middle string is moved a little down toward the bottom string so that it would not be fretted. The only string that can be fretted on this instrument is the one closest to you. This one. Now this was made by Jethro Ambergy in Hyman, Kentucky in 1961. And of course we're looking into the past here already. This is the past. This is really the frontier, although lasting that long. And how do we tune it? An old timer said to me, "Well," he said, "you tune the bass string to a good note." Incidentally, there are handouts here if you want to get it. So, all right, so we got a good note here. I know what it is, but an old timer might not. He just wants a good note. The next two strings are tuned to the same note together, 5 notes higher. Do, sol, sol. Oops, I'm sorry, this is tuned to a different mode. I didn't want to get you into that. I might be forced to it. These wooden pegs are difficult. Sounds right. Do, sol, sol of an 8-note scale. And the instrument is fretted to play scales only. Do, sol, sol, la, ti, do. This needs a little work. That is do, sol, high, do, a chord. The instrument is now fretted not like a guitar in half tones, but in scale tones only. If we start at the 3rd fret and we play, this is what we get. No ifs, ands, or buts, and no sharps, right? This is the traditional dulcimer of the Appalachians. This is, as I said, 1961. He has got a label in here. It says number 473, Jethro Ambergy, Hyman, Kentucky, October 5th, 1961. And this is the past. These things sound beautiful, actually. They have 2 drones and 1 melody, and that's all there is. Anyone can play one, and of course they lived in the mountains because anyone could play one. How do you like that? Isn't that wonderful? Well, so this turned out in Mount Reston, under the bed of a ex-hippie. So there you are. Well, already I knew what it was. I knew who Jethro Ambergy was. And actually, interestingly enough, let me fish this out for you. Let's see what falls off, all right?
You want, you want to put it back?
That's all right.
Oh, okay.
Stay put. If it falls off, folks, you can pick it up, all right? The gentleman here, David, who helped me in with my dulcimers, was very careful. Antique dulcimers, oh, he just handled them so carefully. And in fact, they fall off chairs and tables all the time. He was very helpful. I appreciate it. In 1963, folks, a little item appeared in the New York Times, of all things. It says here, Kentucky dulcimer maker says interest gains in the U.S. Hyman, Kentucky, parentheses, Associated Press. Jethro Ambergy, who has been making dulcimers for 47 years, thinks curiosity has a lot to do with the revival of interest in the 3-stringed instrument. I'm selling more dulcimers now than I ever thought of selling several years ago, said the retired teacher and health department worker. Mr. Ambergy's dulcimers are hand-rubbed and cut from a design used by the late Edward Thomas, a leader among the dulcimer makers of the eastern Kentucky mountains. For your information, Uncle Ed Thomas began making dulcimers in 1870. And now this is a quote, ears open and listening. The dulcimer as we now know it has never been traced down as to who originated it, he continued. The best information obtained is that it originated in the Appalachian Highlands. Didn't come from nowhere, right? It was born in the hills here. That's what Jethro Ambergy thought, and he was an old-time dulcimer maker. Is it true? Well, when I did my field work consisted of running around talking to people, and I drove around with a dulcimer in the back seat visible. And I parked the car here and there, and somebody stepped up and said, you know, we got one of them things at home. And I got to see an old dulcimer that way. But many people, first of all, observe the following, that the music of the dulcimer as we know it is entirely from the Scotch-Irish mountain tradition of old-time mountain music. There's no trace of any other musical tradition in the music that has come down to us with the dulcimer. And I sometimes would hear when I said, "Where did that old dulcimer you got come from?" He said, "Young man," he said, and I love that. "Young man," he said, "that there dulcimer come down from my great-great-grandpappy who brought it over from England in 1823. He knew just the date, but it wasn't true." That wasn't true either. Hello, come in. You're very welcome. And can you come up front and take a couple of handouts?
Sure.
There you go, come on in.
I'm
We
gonna get
welcome
my
you.
husband. I'll do
That's
this.
fine, come on in, and here are the handouts right here, go ahead and get them.
Okay.
We got enough chairs, so you got no problem. We're talking now about the history of the dulcimer and how hard it has been to learn what it really is. So we have Jethro Lambergy saying, "Well, born in the hills." And we have the old guy saying, "Young man, my great-great-grandpappy bought one of them things over from England when we settled here in 1823. Well, research has shown that there are no dulcimers in England, Scotland, or Ireland. There are none at all. Well, after a lot of work, I was back where I started from, but I began to find some strange things, and I'll show you. This is from southwestern Virginia. This was made by Uncle Billy Taft of Independence, Virginia, about 1890. What in the dickens is it? Does it have any relationship to the dulcimer that Jethro Lambergy knew? This is Independence, Virginia, about 1890. Now this one's been refretted, modern fretting. If you look closely, you will see the ghost of the old fretting there, and you'll observe two things. The same thing as the Lambergy. The frets were made out of wire staples, not out of modern instrument fret wire. And I should have mentioned that these are staple frets. They're inserted in the fretboard like staples, and so are these. Now this one is in many respects extremely different. And you tell me. You tell me what's different about this.
Holes in the front board.
Holes in the fretboard. Boy, I think he's a ringer. Listen, come on up and take a couple of handouts. Hi guys, how are you? You'll get to play the dulcimer a little bit later. I'm glad to have you with us. Okay, all right.
It's teardrop
Holes in the
shaped.
fretboard. What's that about? I'll tell you what it's about. You're going to get it right from the horse's mouth. The fretboard is hollow. And the holes are drilled into the fretboard to make the hollow fretboard part of the sound box. Who said we Virginians weren't smart, huh? Who said we were smart? There it is, okay. Never heart-shaped sound holes. I have handled a lot of old Virginia dulcimers and never saw one with heart-shaped sound holes. A tailpiece. Jethro Lambergy's dulcimers had no tailpiece. Is this a dulcimer? When I began to see these, I bought this from one of the relatives, from Uncle Billy's relatives, and all they could tell me is Uncle Billy made it, and they gave me a picture of him, shows him with an old black hat, and just a lean mountaineer, he must weigh 100 pounds wringing wet. A wonderful photograph, I should have brought it. Anyway, there we are. And the question is, what is it we're looking at? And what came first? Are they really related? And just as I was suffering enough about that question, I hit number 3, and I'll show you number 3. Number 3 will knock it over in just a minute.
But Ralph, that one's tear shaped.
I'm sorry.
That one's tear shaped. It's tear
Virginia
shaped.
dulcimers are always tear-shaped.
Right.
They are not hourglass-shaped. Yeah. The trouble with this whole, hi, Tony, how are you?
Hello, Ralph.
Tony, there are handouts here. You're welcome to come up and take them, you will not be disturbing us, and by all means get a couple. And we're looking at old dulcimers now, and trying to understand it. The trouble with all this is you don't find them in the correct order. You find first this and then that, so on, and there comes a time when you have to say, what is the order of this, and how does A relate to B, etc. Now, you've seen A and B, now you're going to see C. Just a second. This is from Galax, Virginia. What in the Sam Hill is it? Huh? What is it? Look at that. Now these guys, I'm going to pass all these around. You're going to be able to see them all right. Well, there are certain clues on this that I will give you in time. I'm going to make trouble for you first. This is disturbing and mysterious. First of all, this is the oldest one here, almost certainly. This is maybe 1850, is it? My mother and dad were antique dealers, and we used to attach dates to anything, as you know about antique dealers. And I'm attaching the date 1850 to this one. I think this is old, very
Very
old.
much like a Pennsylvania Dutch instrument.
Would you say again, sir?
It's very much like a Pennsylvania Dutch instrument.
This guy, here's another ringer. These are found in the Pennsylvania Dutch country. Slowly but surely, you begin to understand what we're talking about. This went into the frontier looking like this. Okay. And he came out looking like Jethro Lambert's. All right. Now, I went to the Smithsonian. I collapsed on their doorstep practically. And I talked to Scott Odell, the curator of musical instruments. And I said, Scott, what is this about? Can you help me? I don't understand it. All I know is I've found about 3 major types, and I don't know what's going on. He gave me the one answer that opened the door to me. He said, follow the wagon roads. Follow the wagon roads. All right, folks, now we will follow the principal wagon road into the frontier. Got it, will you? Okay? Here we, yes, Maddie.
Now, I want to say, I'm a Jeopardy fan, and the Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, that's the only TV. And about a week ago, one of the questions on there, and I knew the answer, because it said, the answer was, what is the wilderness road? And I was like, oh, there.
She knew it.
Yeah, I knew it.
And if you're patient, maybe it'll come up on Jeopardy again, and maybe you'll be the person there. It'll take a while. Okay. The story begins in Europe, and it begins in a section of the old Western Europe between modern-day Germany and modern-day France. And that section is called the Palatinate. And on the Palatinate, in the Palatinate, were a number of dissident religious sects, including the Amish, the Mennonites, the Moravians, people like that. And warfare went back and forth across the Palatinate for 100 years on top of religious discrimination. Religious oppression is the proper word. In 1682, the King of England granted to William Penn a piece of land in the New World that he called Pennsylvania. He was the proprietor by the king's orders, that is to say, he owned it. It was his Pennsylvania. William Penn received it because his father, Admiral Penn, had been a helpful to the king in a number of wars and things like that. And number one, and number two, that rascal William Penn, unlike his good father, was a no-good Quaker. He was a member of another one of those religious sects that sprung up all over the place in Europe. He was a Quaker. So the king thought, here's 2 ways to get rid of the whole thing at the same time. I get rid of my obligation to Admiral Penn, and I get this rascal out of here. I've had enough. William Penn received Pennsylvania in 1682, and in the long tradition of Quakerism, one of the first things he did was he sent representatives to the Palatinate and said to the leaders of the Amish and Mennonites and others, and said, if you will bring your flocks to Pennsylvania, you can have religious freedom here, and you can practice your religion. And as you know, they came. Okay. And they came first to Philadelphia. Now we look at the map. And in the whole history of the United States, perhaps, is in four-letter word, land. The first people get the land. And in Germantown in Philadelphia is the first settlement of the German religious sects who responded to William Penn's invitation and came to the United States with their flocks. It was generally a leader or minister, and he talked to the people and said, do you want to go? Shall we go? And they all decided, yes, we will go. They went. The first people got the land, the next people moved west to Lancaster. Lancaster is the county seat of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the heart of the Pennsylvania Dutch country. Dutch, of course, means German. It was originally a derogatory word used by the Scotch-Irish to describe their neighbors, a bunch of Dutchmen. And they continued on. And the Lancaster and Lancaster County was heavily settled with the Germans. And they spoke a dialect that is still sort of, shoe-fly pie and all that kind of stuff. That was all dialect of the original settlers of the Pennsylvania Dutch country. To York, to Gettysburg, they looked west and decided no. They were not going to cross the Appalachians, the Pennsylvania Appalachians, for two reasons: no trail and hostile Indians. Instead, they crossed the Potomac River just west of Gettysburg at a little place that's called Watkins Ferry. I don't know what it's called now. And entered the Valley of Virginia instead of trying to go west on the Appalachians. Down the Valley of Virginia they went. As you
Is that
know,
Harper's Ferry?
I am sorry?
Is that Harper's Ferry now?
Harper's Ferry, I don't know as much about, but the answer is Harper's Ferry is not on the direct route.
Okay, yeah.
Harper's Ferry, undoubtedly, what happened all along the way is that people, to the left and right of the trail, they found land and settled.
Split off, right?
That's right.
I think it's closer to White's Ferry.
Would you say again,
I
Rick?
think it's closer to White's Ferry, where they crossed.
Well, the so-called Philadelphia Wagon Road crossed at a place called Watkins Ferry.
Right,
Don't push me too hard because I don't know where Watkins Ferry
right,
is.
okay.
But that was the name of the place where the Great Trail crossed at Watkins Ferry. Did not cross at Harper's Ferry.
Right.
That's a whole other question. John Brown and so forth, it's just a fascinating matter. Okay, so down they went, down the Valley of Virginia. As you know, the city of Strasburg is still 90% German in the valley. Down as far as Big Lick, which is now called Roanoke. Some unimaginative person changed its name. I wish they still called it Big Lick. At Big Lick, the road forked. One part of the road crossed the Blue Ridge to the east, from west to east, in the valley of the Roanoke River. There was a valley there through the mountains, and then down into the Carolina Piedmont. The earliest German settlers were at Winston-Salem. We now are in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, called Old Salem Restoration now. They got it all fixed up. That was 1763, all the way down. And then the other half was to the west, Christiansburg and Wytheville. And they got as far as a New River when the French and Indian Wars broke out. And the early settlements along the New River were wiped out by the Indians. And there was a backward movement of settlement and war that you don't want to know anything about between the Indians and the settlers until finally the Treaty of Paris in 1763, when the big boys over in Europe decided things, that the colonies were British, And on the other side, out there in the frontier, were French. And the Indians preferred the French. The French were actually better to them than the English. The English simply took their land. The French helped them out more than the English did, and the Indians liked the French. With the Treaty of Paris in 1763, the big boys divided up the game. I'm recovering from a cold. You will discover that when I try to sing. It's bad enough when I can't sing, man, when I don't have a cold. In the Treaty of 1763, they drew a boundary line and said, all right, you English can settle, and the English settlers can settle to the east of the boundary line. The west of the boundary line belongs to the Indians. And it was agreed upon by the King of France and representatives of the British government. Needless to say, the frontier men weren't in the least interested. Just as soon as the war stopped, they pushed west, right into the Indian country. You can now see the rest of the story. That was called the Wilderness Road. When the settlers, after the Treaty of Paris in 1763, paid no attention to the boundary line and moved west, they followed the Wilderness Road. In 1770, Daniel Boone, who had several times traveled the old Buffalo Trail along there into Kentucky, with 30 axemen, laid out the Wilderness Road, starting at the New River, where settlement had already occurred, and moving west into the wilderness, through the Cumberland Gap and into Kentucky. That is a short story of a great story. I know more, but that'll hold it. Okay. Now the question is, what do we find along this road? Well, there's going to be very little guessing. Will you tell us? Let's see if you'll tell us. I may have caught him. Okay, I finally got him. Boy, it took 3 tries, but I finally got him. All right.
I tried to hold on a box.
Yeah. That instrument that I bought in Galax, Virginia in 1973. Is of German origin. It is of German origin. The earliest records we have of this are in the city-states of Germany. There is a woodcut illustration in an old book of musical instruments. And one of them, number 8 in the list, is called a Scheitholt. This is a Scheitholt. What came down the wagon road with those German settlers was this. And going down through the valley myself, and searching, and then turning west into the Wilderness Road, this is what I found. This is what went into the old frontier. And it came out Jethro Lamberty. This is it. Now the question is, how do we know? All right, I'm going to not hold your time long. I'm going to tell you how we know. I'm going to tell you one of the things we know. It's clear enough already. This instrument, first of all, belongs to a whole bunch of folk instruments of Northern and Eastern Europe that all have one characteristic in common. That is as follows. It has one or more strings that pass over, here we are, and pass over a set of frets. And one or more strings that are set to the right of the frets and play as drones. This one has 3 strings passing over the frets and 3 strings passing to the right as drones. What about Jethro Lamberty? Now you can see it again. Here's hundreds of years later. 1 string really passing over the frets and 2 strings as drones. The same thing. And just in case you're one of those skeptics or think there's a conspiracy theory or something like that, let me show you the following. These instruments are all fretted to play scales. Question is, what scale? Well, let's see what we get here. This is a whole tone, this is a whole tone, that's a half tone. Whole, whole, half. Whole, whole, whole. Let me do it again. Whole, whole, half. Whole, whole, half, right? And whole, 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 and there you couldn't decide what to do. The half is fret is missing. But it's whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. All right, on we go with Uncle Woo. Why don't we just go to Ambergy, and I assure you that the Uncle Billy Taft is the same way. Now let's look at this. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. The same fret pattern. It is the same instrument. It took me a long time with Scott Odell's wonderful one word lesson, one sentence lesson, to get some picture of what it's all about. The instrument, and now also, one more thing I need to tell you about the Great Philadelphia Wagon Road and the Wilderness Road is right on the heels of the early, hi, come on in, sir.
Hey.
Hey, now, get your hand out over here. You're not gonna be disturbing us. Get your hand out over here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, you're under orders, okay. And sit down, don't make any trouble, all right?
Oh, he's the one that causes trouble.
Okay. Let's see where okay. Almost as soon as the Germans, who were the first users of the Great Wagon Road, began to use it, the Scotch-Irish came. The Scotch-Irish were originally Scotch, they were not Irish. They were resettled by the king for reasons that I'm not going to bother you with, in Northern Ireland in 1603, and then 100 years later made a second migration, having intermarried with some of the local Irish, to Pennsylvania and the Wagon Road. And they went down the Wagon Road with the Krauts and the Dutch, all together, calling each other names every inch of the way. Each great frontiersmen, each were great frontiersmen, but for different reasons. The Germans, as you can easily guess, were very meticulous farmers. They laid out beautiful farms, they rotated their crops, they did everything to create a successful farming world. The Scotch-Irish stripped the bark off trees, let them die, killed them, made land that way, and when the soil gave out, they moved. But they were terrific frontiersmen. They were warriors, they really were. In the French and Indian Wars, it was not the Germans, but the Scotch-Irish who were in there doing all that stuff. They were tremendous people at war. And also, of course, very hardy frontiersmen, Daniel Boone and all the rest. They loved the frontier, they were not afraid. So here you have these two quite different groups going down the Wagon Road at the same time. It was not until about 1750 or a little later that the Scotch-Irish immigration down the road exceeded the German immigration. There is a piece of history I bet you were never told, that it was first the Germans and then the Scotch-Irish. They both went into the frontier, and in Gilash, Virginia, in Carroll and Grayson County, is on the borderline. This turns up about 1850, it is German. And these begin to turn up. By 1890, Uncle Billy had obviously seen a Dulcimer and made a Dulcimer. They were already being made. Now, I hope I haven't talked too long. Maddie, last time we were here, I talked too long. It's a good thing they didn't kick me out. But anyway, we want to get going, and thank you. Now, we've already done, I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's give them a care. All right. I'll tell you what I got on my list, and we'll see what to do. I've got a 15-minute break, and in that 15-minute break, I want to invite anybody who wants to come up and try the Dulcimer. see how to play it yourself. We especially want children. What usually happens in these things is, I say, you can all try the dulcimer, the children all jump up and the people back off. I don't know what happens to us between the time of children's and adults. But anyway, you can bring the children if you want. And come on up, anybody who wants to, and you can try it yourself, okay? All right.
Ralph, are they tuned Ionian? Are these Ionian tuning or?